Hello everybody and welcome back. I am KRX and this is going to be a tutorial guide for complete beginners for Europa Universalis 4. We're going to be going very slow and we're going to be holding hands quite a bit. But essentially this is also going to be a tutorial for those that do not have any of the DLCs. There's a lot of DLCs for this game. They do add a lot of gameplay systems and features. So it is a different experience to learn this game with and without the DLCs. And we're going to be doing additional tutorials for both no DLC and also with DLC. So we're just going to be doing tutorial. That's kind of what I enjoy doing because I'm honestly not an expert at this game. It takes hundreds of hours to just learn how to play the game. Thousands of hours to master the game. And while I have played the game for a couple thousand hours, I still don't know what I'm doing, strategically speaking, right? But I do know how to press the buttons, and I can kind of show you in a unique way how we're going to know what we need to do and how we can progress and how we can succeed in the game. So we're going to go to single player here. And we can see the map. So Europa Universalis 4 is a real-time strategy game. It is a historical strategy game, and it takes place at 1444. And you're going to want to start, you can adjust the start date, but we are going to want to keep it 1444. The entire game is sort of balanced around the this starting period. And this is where sort of a lot of the early decisions for your nation is going to be made so that you can actually progress it and customize it into the nation that you want it to be. So we're going to be playing as a nation and leading that nation through 400 years of alternate history. And there are many nations here that the game is sort of suggesting. 3 specifically for beginners: the Ottomans, Castile, and Portugal. I think we're going to be playing as Portugal in this beginner playthrough, but I would like to do many beginner playthroughs, specifically with all of these nations, including some of the ones that are a little bit more tricky, like France and England and maybe Muscovy and even more, so that people can actually sort of have a library of beginner tutorials to choose from, and maybe depending on whether or not they're more interested in England or France or Aragon or something, that they'll be able to follow a tutorial that is more to their match their interests, right? But so we could click on Portugal here, and there's a bunch of stuff over here, right? This is all great. We have no context to understand any of this information, so we're not going to talk about any of this information. But we're just going to click on Portugal, and we can see up here that we have selected Portugal. We have the crest of Portugal up here. We can click on any of these other nations, including some of these smaller ones: Austria, Bavaria, France, Tlemcen, Tunis, so on and so forth. You can play as any nation that is actively sort of simulated and highlighted in the world, right? We have nations in Asia, Southeast Asia, in Northern Asia, and in India, and in Africa. Tons of different sort of cultures and religions, and we have migratory tribes in North America, and the Aztecs in Central America, Mexico, and Central America. So there's so many different things that you can do in this game. We're going to be playing as Portugal. As the name of the game suggests, Europa Universalis, it is very sort of like, the game does kind of center around Europe a little bit, but there has been a lot of content that's been added to enhance the gameplay experience from other around the world. But for new players, it is going to be heavily advisable to play in Europe. So we're going to start up the game. I'm going to select Iron Man because I like the fact that our choices have consequences. This just means that when we make a choice, we have to live with the consequences. Sometimes we'll fail, sometimes we'll succeed. I have faith that we'll be able to survive, though. Normal mode just allows us to, have multiple save files so that we can essentially reload the game a bunch of times. But we're not going to do that. We're gonna go with the flow. We're gonna go with the thematic flow. So we're making the save file there, and I'm just naming it Portugal, and we're here. And it's been a long time actually since I've played Portugal. Portugal was the original nation that I played when the game first came out, but I had already spent quite a many hours, many hours sort of watching people play the game. So I kind of had somewhat of a basis, but I also learned kind of an inefficient way just by watching people just sort of playing the game. Instead, we're going to be teaching the game, right? We're not just playing it, we're teaching it. And the thing is, this game is incredibly complicated and takes a long time to learn. This game is based on a board game, and it's interesting because board game in the board game communities, the modern board game community, actually has a lot of discussions about how do you teach a board game, right? How do you teach board games to people? Because inherently, when 4 people get together to play a board game, there's people at the table that don't know how to play the game. You have to teach them. Board games come with instruction manuals, and they have rules, and you have to follow those rules, or it doesn't make sense. It's actually on you as a player to follow those rules. The funny thing is, this is very similar to a board game. And I think I'm going, as someone who's taught a lot of board games with my friends and family, I'm going to try to teach this game like a board game rather than just going through everything and sort of just reading off tooltips of all these different numbers and values and icons and things. That does nothing for us. We have no context. We don't even know what we're looking at right now. We are looking at the map of the known world, right? When we were picking our nation, we could see the new world, but it's 1444. Like, Portugal hasn't discovered the new world yet. We don't know anything about the new world. We might know whispers that it exists, but we don't know anything about it. We can't talk to those people. We can't send emissaries to those people. We can't have diplomatic relations with those people. Same with the Far East or with Southern Africa. We have no knowledge of the details of these areas. We are playing as Portugal, right? Because we selected Portugal. And essentially the first thing that you do is you just kind of look around and assess your environment. What's going on, right? What's going on? Who likes us? Who doesn't like us, right? We have some banners up here that are ranging between red and green, red, yellow, and green. And these are going to be little things that can actually tell us some things that we can actually look at. This red one is particularly, one that's it's literally flashing at us to take a look at that. But even before we look at any buttons and stuff, we are playing a real-time strategy game. The game is paused, however. We can pause the game whenever we like. It does tell us in the top right that this is the date, the 11th of November, 1444. And we can raise and lower the speed of the game simulation. We'll keep it on very slow for now, but we will see that we'll need to raise that if we'd like to make any progress in the game, because 1 is very, very slow and 5 is very, very fast. So there is a nice sort of spectrum of speeds that we can utilize. I do want to bring everybody's attention down to the bottom right here, though, because these map modes are critically important. Right now, we're in what's called the political map mode, as opposed to the terrain map mode, which doesn't really give us any actual information, but it does make the world look very pretty. Looks like a satellite image of the world or something, right? But more importantly, the political map mode, where if we ever get off of what's familiar, we need to go back and we need to find the political map mode, which is this button right down here, or shortcut W. So this is going to get us back to we're going to spend most of our time in this map mode because this allows us to just quickly identify the different nations. Hungary, Lithuania, Poland, France, a bunch of little ones in there too. Aragon, Castile, right? These are just people, these are just nations in the game. They're not really all of concern to us because as we zoom in here, what's actually going on is we seem to be bordered with Castile. Castile seems to be giving us a bit of a hug right now. We can actually go into what is called the diplomatic map mode, and we can actually, by default, we're selecting our own nation. But if we just click on the map, we can see that the world is broken up into these little provinces. But if I just click on any of these, I've essentially selected our nation. Our nation is selected. This is a Portuguese province that we've clicked on. And we can see, oh, England's gone blue. So England has gone blue. What does that mean? We are allied to them. This is telling us, this map mode is telling us that we have an alliance with England. We start the game with an alliance with England. We don't have an alliance with Castile or Aragon or Granada or Morocco or any of these other nations quite yet. If we click on some of these other nations, we can see, okay, it highlights their borders. And we can click on Aragon, and Aragon actually has, what is this? Naples is in teal, sort of a turquoise teal. So Naples is actually ruled by us, or by Aragon, because we've clicked on Aragon, in a personal union. So Aragon actually controls Naples in a personal union. We can click on Granada. Okay, it highlights them, but there's a little bit of a wavy bit here. It's not completely solid green, but there's some green lines. Granada considers this to be one of her core provinces. Okay, so Granada really thinks that this province right here belongs to them. Interesting. If we click on Morocco here, we get some more teal, but also striped teal. Considers it to be core provinces of Morocco, but it's also, these are vassals. Sus is a vassal. Marrakesh is a vassal, so on and so forth. So these are vassal nations of Morocco. So Morocco controls, if we go back to political map mode, we can see sort of that distinction better maybe. These different little nations here are actually subjects of Morocco. So Morocco can These nations will support Morocco in times of peace and in times of war, and that's going to be very important in assessing that. If we go back to our own diplomatic thing here, we can actually try to see if we have any disconnected pieces of our own country. And it looks like we actually have Madeira. The island of Madeira is Portuguese. The Azores are Portuguese. And we also have Ceuta here, which is Portuguese. So we're just looking around to find disconnected pieces of our country that we'll highlight in green. There we go. So Ceuta is actually like disconnected. This is interesting. Like this isn't even connected through sort of what we think of as Europe, right? This is in North Africa. This is in North Africa. And it's completely surrounded by Morocco. Now we'll notice later whether or not that's a good thing, a bad thing, so on and so forth. We don't know what that means yet. But essentially, if we click on these different countries, we can actually look right down here. Castile, there's a heart here. And there's a plus 25. Castile likes us. Castile likes us. They trust us to uphold their bargains. They trust us. They like us. We are a historical friend. We are of the same religion, but we are allied to Castile's rival. So that must be England, right? So Castile and England have rivaled each other, but for the most part, they're still good to go. Now we might, so this actually, because Castile likes us, there's a good chance that they might want to ally us, right? We are playing as Portugal. We are playing as Portugal. We need to think about thematically, and you do this with every single nation you ever play as in this game, is what are we going to do? What are our ambitions? Are we going to conquer North Africa? Are we going to conquer Iberia? Are we going to conquer Castile? Do we want to fight Castile, or do we want to ally Castile? Who do we want our friends to be, and who do we want our enemies to be? Well, the reality is Castile looks kind of scary. Like, they're actually they look bigger than us. That could mean that they're more powerful than us. There's ways that we can look that up. But for right now, it actually looks like, hey, if Castile likes us, maybe we could go to the diplomacy here, go to the alliance actions. So one of the quick ways to get to the diplomacy screen is just click on the country and click on the diplomacy button right here. We can get a quick little identification of how they feel about us, and we can also see if they have any diplomatic relations here. Like if we click on Aragon, we know they have a personal union on Naples. That should show up down here. Okay, so they have a personal union over Naples. And then there's also a white flag here, which represents a truce. They have a truce with Naples, but they also have a truce with Granada. So they actually have a truce with Granada down here, which means they cannot go to war with Granada. They have a peace truce. So, but we can always just click on a nation. It doesn't matter which province we click on. We don't have to click on their capital or anything. We can just click on, you just throw your mouse out there and you just grab France. You go to the diplomacy, boom. We're in the French diplomacy tab. So anything we do here is this would be offering alliance to France. France is kind of neutral towards us. They don't really want an alliance. That's what this big red X is saying. They don't want an alliance. If we hover over this, we can see why. We can see the reasons why they actually don't want an alliance. This gives us a clue like, hey, maybe we want to ally France. How do we convince France to ally us? Well, France likes us because they have reasons that they want to ally us, like a good, positive diplomatic reputation. And we have a strong navy. They respect our navy, and they would like to ally us because we have a strong navy and because we have a positive diplomatic reputation. But they don't want to ally us because we're allied to the French rival England. And our military strength is pretty low. Our army strength is very low. And just they have a neutral attitude. A neutral attitude isn't going to... you want to make alliances with people that you have positive attitudes with, right? That makes sense, right? France, that makes sense. So the AI, right? Like we picked Portugal, but maybe it is important to note just really quick, right? The AI is playing all the other nations, and all these other nations will be wheeling and dealing. They'll be making alliances and enemies and rivals and all kinds of things. And through that, different alliance networks will come up and certain nations will rise and fall. Certain nations that won't be able to play the diplomatic game will get destroyed, and certain nations that play it really well will be able to rise to power. Every nation in this game, whether it's Savoy or Milan or Venice or Austria or Bavaria, all of these nations are playing the game. The AI is playing the game for all of these different countries. Oh, looks like Aragon really hates us. That is minus 75 because they have rivaled us. There is a rivalry between Aragon and ourselves, and Aragon has declared that. We haven't actually rivaled them, but Aragon has rivaled us. So Aragon doesn't like us. So that would have been maybe a potential ally for us. Ooh, Granada's really hostile. Granada isn't a rival, they're just hostile. They just absolutely hate us. We have one of their cores. We were at war before the game started. We're different. We're neighboring different religions. So they are a different religion. They're a different culture. They just despise us. Ideologically, we will never be friends with Granada. It just will not happen unless something fundamentally changed with our perspective on how we see the world, right? We are a good, God-fearing Christian nation, and the Granadans are the Sunni heathens, essentially, thematically, right? And we can go there. Let's actually look, now that we've learned that Granada is a different religion and that's affecting our diplomacy, let's go to the actual religious screen. And we can see Catholic, a unified Europe, trusting in the Catholic faith. Trusting in the Catholic faith. We have some sort of religious instability and discontent here with the Orthodox mixing with Catholic. And we also have the Sunni faith, some Abadi in here. But Granada is strongly Sunni. Strongly Sunni. This is all Catholic. And historically, right, what's going to happen is there's going to be a reconquest of Granada. Castile is going to want to reclaim this land as part of them ultimately forming Spain and pushing back the Sunni people and the Sunni culture. Now we actually have this province over here, and this is striped yellow to say that, hey, this is Sunni. We own Ceuta. This province of Ceuta, we own it. But it is of Moroccan culture and it of Sunni religion. So the people here actually sort of, truly sort of identify themselves as being Moroccan. This isn't a home of sort of like typical, like yeah, there's Portuguese people living here because we control this. We probably have a number of people sort of quote unquote settling in this area, right, to maintain some level of order and control, right? But for the most part, the people here have been conquered by us. These people have been conquered, and they are of Moroccan and Sunni faith, Moroccan culture and Sunni faith, and that's going to create unrest. And we can actually see that right here. There is some unrest in the province. Just looking at this is the province information stream. We're not talking about most of this, but we could see that just looking at the culture and Sunni religion, these are in red, right? So that means that these are non-accepted cultures. This is a non-accepted religion. These are heathens. These are heathens by the Catholic state, right? The Catholic state considers these people heathens. So this is all creating unrest because some of that unrest is getting pushed out by something called legitimacy, but it's also saying there's religious unity issues that are causing some unrest. There's intolerance. That is intolerance towards the Sunni religion. So the intolerance towards this religion, towards these people, is creating an unrest, right? We are not treating these people fairly. We are not treating these people with tolerance, and they are creating unrest and attempting to rise up because of that. But that'll be something that can happen in the future, and we'll be able to potentially deal with that. But that is good to know, right? And in fact, there's a button up here, Provincial Unrest, that's actually warning us of the Moroccan Separatists. These are people that want to actually secede from Portugal and join the Moroccan nation. The Moroccan Separatists, we can hover over the 0% here, and it's saying there's a 2.6 unrest in Ceuta, but it is warning us here. If we read this giant tooltip, it says at this pace, at the point of 2.6%, we haven't talked exactly how rebellions build, but it isn't something that will just randomly happen. It does have to build up first. But it's actually estimating that this will rebel in 32 years. And that has already put me to sleep because 32 years, like, forget them. Like, they'll just have to deal with it. 32 years is nothing. We're going to be totally fine. We have tons of time. 32 years? Are you kidding me? It's a long time in this game. It's a long time. So we're not expecting these people to actually rebel anytime soon, but there is just a sort of an undercurrent of unrest in this specific province, okay? So Portugal, we've looked at we haven't actually looked at Morocco yet. Let's look at Morocco. Morocco has rivaled us. In fact, Morocco just absolutely hates us even more than Granada. So, and that makes sense, right? Because what we can imagine is because these guys are a different religion, a different ideology, we're starting to understand why these different nations like us and don't like us, right? France doesn't like us because we're allied to England. Aragon doesn't like us because they've rivaled us. Morocco, Tlemcen, Tunis, Granada, none of these nations down here like us because they're fundamentally of a different ideology. So we need to find people, so quite honestly, to push forward the Catholic crusades and such to return to pushing back the heathens and whatever, we might actually be trying to conquer. This might be land that we can conquer. These people already don't like us. It wouldn't be that hard. We could join up with our fellow Christians here and sort of attack into the North Africa and expand the Portuguese Empire into these lands down here, right? So this could be a means of conquest. Coming down here, we already have a foothold in North Africa. This could be a means of conquest. But these are the kind of thematic ideas that we're thinking about, so that we understand how to actually decipher the diplomatic system in this game, right? We have to understand what we want to go after. We have to create goals, and those goals drive our diplomacy, right? So if we know we want to attack these guys because they already don't like us, they're already going to be mortal enemies. In fact, they might actually scheme to attack us because they despise us. That means that they might attack us. Nations that love us won't attack us, but nations that don't like us might. So it actually makes sense that we need to ally who we can to defend ourselves against North Africa, but then also plan our own attack against North Africa. We're already allied to England. They're a very powerful nation. Castile likes us. We noticed that Aragon didn't like us. Castile likes us. Maybe we could ally Castile. Maybe that's one of the first things that we do. They'll accept. They have a friendly attitude towards us. They have a lot of trust in us. Castilian opinion, they have a positive opinion of us. We have a good diplomatic reputation. They do not like the fact that we are allied to England, but overwhelmingly, there's positive reasons that they want to ally us. They also think we have a weaker army than they do. So Castile has a more powerful army. That's good to know. So this will be a good, friendly ally. And we don't want to make an enemy of Castile when we have enemies on all sides, right? We kind of want Castile to be a buffer zone. We want Castile to protect us. We want Castile to help defend Ceuta, since Ceuta is kind of disconnected from our own nation. It'd be kind of trickier if we couldn't actually have sort of access through Castile to actually get down here. So we'll send a diplomat over. Oh, wait a second. Actually, we didn't even talk about that. We just sent a diplomat to Castile. We have 3 diplomats, and if you look up here, we can see we have different people up here. We have 2 traders, but they're being used right now, 0 to 2 available. We have no colonists. We have 3 diplomats, but one of them just got sent. We had to send a diplomat to make that alliance. And then we have a missionary. So we had to send a diplomat to make that alliance. So these diplomats are basically physical people that do jobs. Now, this guy's going to be returning in 3 days. An alliance, you just send them, they accept or deny, and then they come back, right? And you know whether they're going to accept or deny just because it tells you on that screen. It's never a guessing game. It'll tell you the exact reasons why someone will accept or deny. So what we could try to do is we can use this other diplomats to improve relations with people. Like, we could try to find other people that will... See, England, because we're allied to England, we might want to strengthen the alliance. We might want to actually go into influence actions or relationship actions, and we can actually send a diplomat to just improve relations. This will just passively increase this number. Right now, we're at a plus 75. And that's because we're alliance. We have an alliance. This number can actually go up to plus 200 through the different modifiers, right? And one of those modifiers could be just improving relations with them. And over time, we'll build up relations with England. The thing is, England's going to be a little upset because we've allied Castile, because these guys are rival to each other. So we are going to have to actually sort of butter this guy up to be like, oh, no, it's fine. I know you're rival with Castile, but everything's going to be fine. Don't be too mad about that. England's going to be upset that we've allied Castile. So we might actually want to sort of buffer that and give them a little bit of love. Or we could look for someone else to maybe make another alliance. Now the question is, why don't we just ally everybody? Why don't we just literally ally everybody we can? Well, we could go into our own diplomacy screen here. And there's a few different ways we can do that. Click on one of our provinces. Anytime we see our crest, we can just click on our crest. So we're now in our diplomacy screen here. And there's one thing that I want to look at really quickly, and that is diplomatic relations, 1 out of 4. Okay, so we can have 4 diplomatic relations, and having a diplomatic relation is basically, it's per nation. So I can have multiple interactions with England, but as long as I have at least 1 diplomatic relationship with England, it'll take up 1 diplomatic relationship slot. Now, we can go over this number. In fact, there's not really any hard and fast rules in this game. We could have 10 alliances, but we don't need 10 alliances. And it might actually be hard for us to get so many as we are literally on the western edge of the known world. We're kind of isolated in a sense, right? We have a lot of enemies to the south. We have an enemy in Aragon. France doesn't really like us. We've already allied Castile and England. You know, we'd have to start reaching further and further away to get any more alliances. So we might not need any more alliances. But right now, this is saying that we have available slots of 4 diplomatic relations, and it's good to go up to that number. It's good to think about how can we actually sort of build up to that 4. But as we go over 4, it'll cost us more what's called diplomatic power to sustain more relationships. So right now, our country, the organization of our country will allow us to sustain 4 diplomatic relations without penalty, right? We can go over that number, but it incurs a slight penalty. We have to exhaust more of our nation's focus on diplomacy, and that actually strains us from being able to do other things with our diplomacy, right? That reduces our ability to do other diplomatic actions by having more diplomatic relations. The other thing I'm noticing here is if we just go through these tabs really quick, we have too few rivals. Okay, we've found that we have some rivals, right? Morocco doesn't like us. Granada doesn't like us. Aragon doesn't like us, although Granada wasn't technically a rival. In fact, we can see here our enemies are the people that rivaled us. Anyone that rivals you will be an enemy. So Aragon, Morocco, Tunis, all enemies. We can go down here and we can select our own rivals. In fact, we can rival Granada. They already hate us. We could rival Granada. They're nearby. We might be able to do an offensive against Granada. And it makes sense to rival the people that we want to go on the offensive against, right? That makes sense because if we're rivaled to someone, there's more likelihood that there'll be little skirmishes on the border, and we can spy on them easier, and it's easier to convince our own people, our own citizens, that it's worthy to go to war against these people, right? Like we can create better justification for war against our rivals and convince our own people that war is the right path, and also convince other nations around us, our allies and our non-allies, other nations in the region, that the war is justified, right? So we need to rival people in order to create those justifications for war. It helps us create those justifications for war. So we're going to basically try to rival people that we can beat up. The other thing, so from rivaling, we can get some benefits here. And like these all tie into what I was talking about sort of getting a little advantages in war. So Granada is someone that we might go beat up. They don't like us. They're weak. They're Sunnis living on Iberia. So we kind of want to push them back, right? So let's rival Granada. We know Morocco already hates us, so let's just rival Morocco. And then if we're looking around here, Tunis doesn't like us, so maybe we could rival Tunis. Maybe they're kind of far away though, so do we really care about them? And Aragon's rivaled us, but Aragon's kind of a big scary nation, and they also control Naples, right? We learned that earlier. So I don't know if we want to rival Aragon or not. I don't know if we want to, or maybe eventually Aragon will actually become our friend. We definitely don't want to rival Castile, right? Because we're trying to build an alliance with Castile. The interesting thing here is it does talk about army size comparison. Castile has an army that's 100% stronger than us. So we don't necessarily need to make an enemy out of someone who has a stronger military than us, right? Whereas Tunis actually has a weaker military than us. So let's select Tunis. They already hate us. We have a stronger military than them, so they're our rivals. So we didn't rival Aragon because we're hoping that maybe they'll actually become friendly with us later. If we just kind of give them time. We'll give them space, we'll give them time, and they might actually decide not to rival us in the future. Instead, we've rivaled Granada because there can be no peace between Portugal, Castile, and Granada. It is not in the cards. So we actually took care of one of those banners up there. We've already noticed that there's a little bit of unrest in Ceuta. It says here that we can, these green ones are not important, essentially. It does remind us that we have a truce with Granada. The truce with Granada is ending in 1449. So we can't attack Granada for the next 5 years, which is okay. That'll give us time to prepare and stuff like that. But for the most part, I think we've used our diplomats, or did we actually send that one to England? Let's butter up England. I think we were kind of wondering, should we do this? Should we not do this? Let's butter up England. And we sent one to Castile to get the alliance with Castile. They'll accept that. The last thing that we could send our diplomats to do, and I think the last thing we'll do in this very beginner, very slow going episode, we haven't even unpaused the game yet, guys. But that's the kind of game this is. Even when I play the game myself, I can usually spend 30 minutes to an hour literally just looking at the ecosystem, just trying to evaluate things. We haven't actually looked at the internal workings of our country yet. There's so many things we haven't talked about and we haven't covered. We're just looking at things. How do we make decisions, and how do we progress, and how do we sort of start on our way diplomatically, right? And we've learned about diplomats. We've learned about some of the important map modes. We've learned about these tabs up here and rivals and who likes us and who doesn't like us and how to see into the future, how to plan for future conquests, and how to shore up alliances, right? These are really important things to sort of do at the beginning of the game. We have one more free diplomat though, and what we're going to do with this diplomat actually is we are going to use this diplomat not as a peace sort of, not as a sort of typical upstanding diplomat. Instead, we're going to use this diplomat as a spy to build up espionage in another country. So one thing that diplomats are also our spies. And if we go to diplomacy here, there's something called covert actions. And one of the things I like to do is if these are all closed, I like to just open these things up and you can just sort of read through these. There's so many different diplomatic actions you can take on another country. We have Granada selected. We can always double check whose name is up here. So Granada is the one that's selected, right? We can ask for different sort of military access. There's different economic sanctions and sort of deals and stuff that we can make with them. Covert actions, though, is the thing that we're looking for, right? Covert actions is what we're looking for. And we can fabricate claims. This gives us a cause for war. This gives us a reason to go to war, because right now we're at peace. This isn't necessarily like Warcraft or Starcraft where you're just constantly at war with any of the other sort of nations, or Age of Empires or something like that, right? Or whatever. No, there's actually the difference between peace and war, right? And to go to war is something you actually, it's a state of the game. You're at war with a nation. It's like a diplomatic state that a nation can be in. And to go to war, we need a reason to go to war, a casus belli, a cause for war. And the reason and the way that we can build that up is through the spy networks. So we can use spy networks to fabricate claims, to basically, in fabricating a claim on a piece of land. So we're going to build the spy network, right? Because what the way the spy network works is it slowly builds up points. We can see that fabricate claim requires 20 spy network. So first we build a spy network, and then we can spend that spy network to support rebels, sow discontent, sabotage reputation, infiltrate administration, and fabricate claim, right? These are different actions that we can take with our spy network, but it takes a certain amount of time to build up. It looks like it's going to be building up by 1.84 per month. And then it's saying down here to fabricate a claim, we need 20. But once we have a claim on Granada, we have a just reason to go to war with them, to seize their land. And we can make claims on anybody that we border, either directly, like we could make claims on Castile very easily, or Morocco down here adjacent to this province, right? Or we can make them across the sea tile, as long as they're connected via one sea tile. So we can actually reach Gibraltar here in this province. We can claim both of these provinces can be claimed. And then we can also get claims on all of these provinces because they're connected to Ceuta, and then also these provinces because they're connected via the sea tile, right? The Straits of Gibraltar sort of interconnect a lot of this stuff to Ceuta and also to Algarve. So that's what's going on there. So we're building up the spy network in Granada for a future war against Granada, as we'll need claims on this country to justly go to war and have a cause for war. But guys, that was a very long, I admit, but very slow going and very thematically grounded sort of introduction as to how to get going and how to start making your plans and taking some actions and building some diplomatic relations and sort of bracing for the future in Europa Universalis 4. We're going to be continuing this tutorial. We're going to be looking at the internal state of Portugal, our military, our navy, our economy. Very important stuff to be able to actually progress and start playing the game and unpause the game. So we need to kind of figure out what's going on within our country. We've kind of looked at the ecosystem around our country, which is incredibly important to assess that properly. That's going to set you up for success. But now we need to go in and actually make sure the country is running perfectly on the inside as well, because you're managing your internal country and you're also sort of managing the ecosystem around you, the diplomatic ecosystem around you. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching this episode. We'll be back with the other one. I apologize if this one ran a bit long, and we will be back. Of course, we do stream a lot on Twitch as well, and we play a lot of Europa Universalis on there. There is a new update coming out. We play with the DLCs though, right? If we're playing on Twitch, we're usually using all of the DLCs. It's a great place to come and ask specific questions if something didn't quite make sense. I also read every single comment and respond to every single comment. So if you guys ask a question down below in the comments, I will respond to it. Guys, thanks everybody for being here. I will see you guys in the next one, and we will continue on and sort of going step by step through and looking at the internal state of Portugal.